Awesome. So we are officially recording. Welcome everybody to this week's SDW OneCon virtual. This week we're going to be talking about Blackboard, specifically not so much the how-tos of Blackboard, although we might get into that a little bit, but what are some of the success stories? What are the things that are working for Waukesha staff members as they utilize Blackboard? And one of the first people that came to mind for me as our first kind of host to the conversation is Mitch Propson. Mitch has he's a science teacher at Waukesha South High School, and he is also becoming an increasing Blackboard user over the years. And he will tell a little bit about his journey today and how he got started, and a little bit about what he's doing with it today, just so we can hear that story. It'll be a pretty open conversation. So feel free to ask questions as we go, either in the chat, which we will monitor, or open up your microphone at different times when Mitch pauses, and we can ask questions at that point. So, Mitch, welcome. Thank you so much. Why don't you do a quick introduction of yourself, and then go ahead and start sharing some of your Blackboard story.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for asking me to come on. I appreciate it, and I'm honored. So yeah, my name is Mitch Propson. I've been teaching at Waukesha South this is my fourth year now. And this is my fourth year overall teaching as well. So I started my very first year when I came in. We used Blackboard, but we had like a shared Blackboard course between like all of the chemistry teachers at South. And when I first jumped in, we had like material in there from like teachers that haven't been working in the district for several years, and I was just really kind of bogged down, the course it was. That first year was honestly just me trying to figure out how the heck to use Blackboard, how to upload things, what does it look like for students, and then I think then the second year kind of decided to go my own way, build my own course. I still struggled my second year just trying to figure out how to use it. But then it was more so like being part of the Vanguard team and seeing how other people were using it really helped push me then into getting into Blackboard and finding all of the perks of Blackboard as well. So now getting into my fourth year, what I've really found to be one of the most beneficial things for my students was just honestly the way that I organized the page. It used to just be like a big dump of resources for me, where it was just like a long list of pages for each unit. This year I've started to actually organize it into specific topics with essential questions and things like that. So now when kids are asking me questions, they're actually asking me about the topics. They're not just being like, I don't understand page 85. It'll be like, Mr. Propson, I don't understand percent yield very well. Can you help me understand that? So it just has led to, honestly, more specificity of language from the kids, just honestly the way that I even organize my Blackboard page. I've also gotten a lot more into using the assessments part of Blackboard as well. So I would say the combination of organization, assessments, and then I have been doing virtual lectures or lecture videos. Those things have been probably some of the most transformative things for my practice just in this last year.
Okay. So I'm going to pause you for just a second, Mitch, as you're talking about, so that transition year, right? So you're coming out of year two and you're like you decide I'm going to break away from this group think class that you have going on. You start your own class year two, there's really nothing that's pushing you at this point to do it though, right? Like, so at some point there was a pearl that came along for you that you were like, all right, this makes sense. Like, what was that for you? What was the place where you went, okay, I think it's worth the time and investment of time on this?
When kids told me that when they came in and were asking me questions about things that I had on like an online answer key or something like that, it was like, oh, kids use this at home. Or it allows like some of the learning to continue at home as well. So that's, I think, probably was the big thing that pushed me. And that's what continues to push me as well, especially as this year I've gotten in, even before we started doing the at-home learning, I've been doing video lectures pretty much the whole year. And the big thing for me on that originally was for kids who are sick, or just like miss school for whatever reason. It allows them the opportunity to see the same material, even without being in class that day. So that was a big thing there. As time kind of went on, it actually became more of a teaching tool for me, where instead of me lecturing, what I could actually do is I could have the kids watch the video lecture in class, and then I use that time then to check in with students. So like I said, I use the Blackboard assessments as well. So what I'm able to do then is, while they're watching the video lectures, I go through the assessment data from like maybe the previous topic, and then I can check in with the kids who maybe didn't do so well on my last like 5-question assessment that I gave them. And then most of the time, the kids will just be like, oh yeah, once I saw what I got wrong and I saw the feedback from the assessment, I'm good. But then, maybe 1 out of every 5 of them will be like, oh yeah, I still don't understand this. So then I get to have that conversation one-on-one while other kids are still learning.
Okay. No, it's an amazing transformation when you start to think about it, right? Like that your practice shifted because of the tool that and the time you invested. Do you have the ability to screen share?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you mind kind of taking us into a tour of your course a little bit?
Sure. It's nothing magnificent, but it's something. Let's see. I think this is what I want. All right, can you guys see it?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, so I've kind of broken down my Blackboard page into kind of 3 main sections. The first one here would be kind of just like course information. Then my course content, which I have separated into different units. And then finally, just like student reference information, whether that's like reference pages that I use in class or like other YouTube channels and things like that that have good resources. It's just a lot of other stuff for the kids. The content stuff, I'll hop into one of my units here. All right, kids were just finishing up States of Matter, so I'll hop in there. So I guess when you go into one of my units, what you're immediately going to see if you're a student are the different topics that we'll cover throughout the course of that unit, so they can kind of have an idea of what they're all looking for. Within each topic folder then are the activities that we would do for that particular topic. So this is an example of one of my items. With the essential question, a little blurb about what they should be learning as part of that topic, and then usually links to several different materials in here. So yeah, so this one's kind of a more unique one where I had a specific reading for the kids, and then a simulation that they were looking at as well. But then I also included just a short video where I kind of highlighted some of the main points of the reading, just to make sure that they were seeing that. This particular topic, I only had one thing, and then I have just usually a short 5-question formative. I usually throw in a meme or a GIF or something. The kids usually like that, that as well. It's usually always related to whatever the topic was. So,
but you can really start to see your personality coming through in that. And, even I'm just noticing in the first one you take us into here, you've got really explicit directions, it looks like. Is that something you've evolved into, or is that something you've kind of always done there?
It evolved over time. As I found out what things become like more apparent to kids, or honestly, it becomes more of like the structure of the class too. Kids get used to the routines, and they get used to, I open up either a notes page or a reading, and then I split screen it with a video on my iPad, something along those lines. So it honestly became more of a routine, but it was, I think, because I became more structured with the way that I had it. In the past, I honestly just had lists of items that just had like a link to a PDF, and that was it, with no essential question and no like instructions or like what they're expected to learn. So that part has grown over time for sure.
And then I'm noticing on the left-hand side, Mitch, so we've got that district generic template that is out there, kind of the course overview of the syllabus, all of those pieces. So did you add that in this year, or when did that come along?
I did that. I think it was maybe at Summer Institute last year. I did that because I don't know if that's when you guys rolled that out, the course shell or whatever.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so I think during that time I reorganized everything kind of with those titles. I have a few of them that are unique to me, like badges and quiz and test scores and things like that. But most of them are like the ones that were from the course shell.
Yeah, so I mean, for somebody who's not a standard Blackboard user, I'll go back to 4 years ago when you came in. The consistency was all chemistry students had exactly the same experience, and then go into somebody else's course and have a different experience there. So what you really outlined here nicely is this would be what most kids will see once we bring in the generic template. Um, at least there'll be something consistent from course to course when all courses are in Blackboard.
Right. Yeah. I actually have liked it a lot, just in this 1 year, because what I used to have honestly was just like a long list of units, and then that's hard for the kids to see as well on their iPads. It can be a little finicky. But yeah. Overall, I think it's been a generally a nice transition. The one I don't know. Do you want to talk about assessments or any specific
No, that's
like that
so
at all?
assessments are something we don't typically like. We don't push a lot on the assessment side of it just because you have to get through what you've gone through, which is a little bit of a development phase to get to
Yeah.
that point. But this is kind of the cherry waiting for you on the other side. Like I remember when we first talked about assessments and you seemed super excited and had questions about it. So I want to hear about kind of what has pulled you into using them.
Yeah. The the big thing is that my first year and actually 2 years, it was my first 2 years teaching. I did not have a ton of like formative assessments naturally built, and the ones that I did have were not. Uh, I did not do a great job of getting feedback to them in a decent amount of time. So by going into and starting to use the more online assessments, it gave the kids feedback. It was actually a student request. I do like a survey at the end of each year, and one of my kids sent something that just said, I felt like throughout the year I didn't know if I actually knew things or didn't. Right. So that's when I started doing that, where it's usually at the end of each topic, just about 5 quick questions. I started off just with multiple choice, but then I found that there's a ton of different options for assessments that are there. Um, I don't know if I'm trying to think if I know this one I think was pretty good. Let me see here. So you can do ones that are like drop down list. The one that I don't know why I was so amused by it. Do I have it in this one? Oh no, it's not. But it's like the hotspot questions where you can like just ask the kids to click on a part of a picture. Um, and so it's great, like if you're doing something, say with maps, and you want them to identify, say, a country, or if you're doing anatomy and you want them to identify like a part of the body, they just have to like click on the picture for where it is. So it was also good for one of my graphing type questions. I wanted them to identify a specific point on a graph. So it was really easy to do that as well.
Well, and I think that's the interesting thing about the quizzing tool or the assessments tool is it is really like the hard part about Blackboard is there's so many options, right? That's the same thing on the front side that makes you overwhelmed, but on the back side of that, once you get used to Blackboard, those options are super robust for you.
Yeah, I would say that that was like when I think about Google Forms versus like Blackboard assessments, Google Forms, like the ease of use is much better than what Blackboard's is. But there's a ton more like functionality and personalization that can be done, I think, with the Blackboard assessments. Um, but yeah, the other part of the assessments that was really good for students, I think, was that I forgot to mention before, was just you can provide the immediate feedback for kids. So they hit submit, they automatically see their score and they see their feedback on it. The part that I have recently just discovered that I like is the quiz and test scores part as well. So I think in Blackboard it's called like My Grades or something like that. And when you click into that, then the kids can see the score that they've had for every single formative throughout the entire year. And then they can even like click on the specific assessment and then go back and look at their feedback on that as well. So it's all in one place that they can see every single assessment that they've done and see all of their feedback on it.
In one spot.
Yeah.
Mitch, I'm going to pause you for just a second. Adam, you had a question you had asked earlier on the chat. Would you mind giving voice to that?
Which one? I had two of them.
You do both.
Mitch, looking back, you mentioned 4 years ago that it was difficult for you coming as a new teacher. That's kind of been not an expectation, but an avenue for us, maybe in the math department of, hey, here is a Blackboard shell. Any suggestion for departments that are, as somebody new comes in, what could be more beneficial? I know you said there was, it was pretty discombobulated. It was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Honestly, just having some, how do I say, having like the basic things or basic activities that are expected to be done for that particular course, I think would be awesome to have in there. I think what was so hard about the course that I was in initially was that there were just so many resources there. It was hard to even know where to begin looking. And like I said, there were so many resources from old teachers who hadn't even taught in the department for a few years already. And a lot of that stuff wasn't even being used anymore. So just having like specific things, probably with like the units and topics laid out and well organized, because then that gives me more of a holistic picture of like, oh, this is what I'm expected to teach. And this is kind of like the progression through which we'll go. So I think that would probably be the best, and maybe a little bit more of a minimalist approach. I guess I don't know, Brian, what your guys' expectation is with that.
I do think like you mentioned, like the minimalist approach. I know they've been taking kind of just the general course shells and then making it personable, which is what you kind of mentioned. Your year two has made it more you and things that worked for you, and so I think just kind of keeping it general, but keeping the core topics that maybe need to be there, and just some handouts or kind of topics that way would be pretty beneficial.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then just also for anyone that's just starting with Blackboard, keep in mind, like, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time that you jump in and the first time that you're doing it. Like I said, this was, over the course of 4 years, kind of like baby steps where I add a little bit more each year. But the nice thing is whatever I did last year, I have again this year, right? And then I can just add to it and then keep adding to it. Like I said, the video lectures was the new thing that I added this year. So I was able to focus a lot of my time on doing the video lectures and not so much on building my Blackboard course. So it's just each year I'm able to add a few new things in. Did you have another question, Adam?
In your Blackboard, when you first got there, it said adaptive release. Do you currently use that?
Oh yeah, I just started using it, honestly. I think
Sometimes like when you click in a unit, there's just so much there that I think sometimes kids get overwhelmed. I haven't used it, and so I'm just wondering if it's good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, I just started using it with our online learning for the very first time. I've wanted to dabble in it for a couple of years now, and I just haven't had the time to explore with it. Or I don't know, it was put on the back burner. So yeah, I started with my Unit 7 just because I was realizing that as I was giving student instructions online, it was still difficult for some kids to be able to just like focus. Like you said, it's just a little overwhelming. So yeah, what I did is I start off when the kids come in, they can only see one topic at a time. And then once they finish, so like for topic 1 here, once they finish this topic 1 assessment, they get a badge if they have like I think it was 4 out of 5 on this. And then when they come back to the screen, then topic 2 would be opened up for them, and then they could start with topic 2. So originally it kind of freaked kids out a little bit because they're like, wait, on your instructions it says we're supposed to do like topic 2 or 3 this week, but I don't see that one up there. But then after they get used to the fact that, oh, it shows up once I am ready for it, it's actually been really streamlined, and I've had very minimal questions about what to do from one day to the next. It seems to kind of push them in the right direction, and they seem to be pretty happy with it.
Yeah, it gives them that personalization for it too. It can work at their own speed.
Absolutely. There's a ton of other stuff you can do with the adaptive release as well. Like I haven't done it, but I know that some people also will, like, you can put students into groups and then you can have like differentiated readings and things like that as well with adaptive release. But again, that's not something that I've gotten into yet.
And that's, I think, part of the conversation, you know, when you talk about had we taken Mitch's class the way it is today, and he had adaptive release, and I handed that to a first-year teacher and said, here's your copy of the course, as even with the streamline there, the adaptive release alone would throw somebody over the edge. Like, this is just
absolutely.
too much. But the ability for us to say, okay, we have some core pieces that are here, and then you can build upon that. And if somebody doesn't want to use the adaptive release, you know, that's fine. That's not, if you don't get into the assessments, that's okay. But the kids are still going to come to the same place every day, Blackboard, and be able to get it into that course and get the core stuff, save you some time as a new teacher. So that, yeah, I mean, the more minimalistic we can be with some of those pieces, the better. Absolutely. And the clearer we can label things, that's the other half of it. Sometimes we just have this online filing cabinets, and that can be problematic. I'm just going to pause. Is there anybody else listening in who's got questions for Mitch?
I'm wondering, do you have like a resource that would show how to set up that My Grades, the quiz and test score thing? Because that is really cool.
Yeah, I can actually just show you real quick here. It's you said just about the quiz and test score tab that I have?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I can just show you real quick on my screen. If you go to the plus, there's the option for tool link here. And then from there, where it says type, then I think it's called right here, My Grades is what it's called. I renamed it then. If you could just name it My Grades if you want, but I renamed mine to be Quiz and Test Scores. So it's just a tool link that you can add in, and then it just goes on that sidebar.
Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. That was honestly one that I just discovered, like, I think maybe a month ago. Brian, I can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Kayla, are you using quizzes and tests?
I've been using the tests, and I've had my kids submit some videos, and I haven't found a good way for them to see my comments. So I think that's the part I was missing.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavily used tool for our eAchieve students who are, you know, their grade book is Blackboard actually. And so they use that quite often. And if you live in that world and you use the Blackboard assignments and quizzes and tests, then those My Grades really is helpful for the students. So good tip, Mitch.
Yeah, I've been using quizzes and assessments for like 2 years now, maybe, and my kids have always been frustrated with having to like find where they took the tests so that they could go back and see their feedback on it. So I was really happy to find that one.
Are there other questions?
Is the adaptive release only tied to quizzes and tests based on score?
No, you can do adaptive release for anything. Let's see if I can find one. I think it was within this topic. Yeah, so for this one here, you'll see where it says enabled review. So for that one, on the student side, there will be a little button that comes up that says mark reviewed. So basically the idea is that when they're done with this, then they'd have to click mark review, and then it'll open up new things. I also had things I wanted them to turn in and have them review this as well. And then once they were done reviewing everything, then it would open up more content for them. You can do it with assignments as well. So if you want them to like upload assignments or post on a discussion board, or do like a journal or a blog, you can have the adaptive release contingent on completing one of those things as well. So there's a ton of different options with it. The one that I just happen to use the most happens to be the assessment side.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So, Mitch, you've given us a pretty good foundation on which you've built. Now, I want to imagine a world beyond just online teaching, right? So we get back to school and fall on some level. Do you have a vision for like how does this fit face to face, and where do you go from here?
Yeah. The big one face to face, I kind of mentioned earlier about for kids being able to like view video lectures in class and then me be able to check in with them. That's honestly at this point in my career probably the biggest benefit of Blackboard and just the way that I have my course set up. In the future, as I move forward, it's my brainchild right now, that I really want to push my course to be very student driven, where they're basically in teams. So say like a 5-student team or something like that. And within that team, they are aware of the like learning objectives or the learning targets or essential questions that we have for each topic or for each unit. But it's up to that team to kind of determine how they are going to go about learning that material. So my Blackboard page then would be kind of like the central hub for like finding resources, or it could be a starting point for finding resources, where they could go through it kind of traditionally, the way that I have it currently set up, or they could use it as like a launch point into things that they are more interested in while still meeting those particular learning targets or learning objectives. And then from there, the form of assessment could be any number of things from like traditional tests to journaling about their learning process as they've gone through the learning topics, doing blogs, doing portfolios, doing videos. So giving kids tons of options for demonstrating that and using Blackboard kind of as like the central launch point for resources. So that's kind of my big picture. I have no idea how I want to even like necessarily get started on it, but yeah, that's kind of where my thought is for like 5-10 years from now, where I'd like to be.
So I'm just going to ask Mitch. I mean, you're talking about 4 years into this, and you've come this far. I'm just curious. Is that something you could have even like imagined in year 1 or 2 of teaching?
No, I actually just finished up one of the like online TDP courses, and in there, I think I wrote a reflection about how in year 1, I never would have imagined that 3 or 4 years in, the main focus of my practice was going to be around technology. It honestly just kind of happened over time as I dove a little bit more into Blackboard, and just played with it, figured out how it worked. Like you said before, at first it can be a little overwhelming just because there are so many possibilities there. I honestly just started with the basics and then each year tried something a little bit new. And yeah, I never ever would have imagined that I would be thinking about using video lectures or all of the online assessments the way that I use them, adaptive release, thinking about having students determine how they're going to be assessed using technology. Like none of that was on my mind even really a year ago, much less 4 years ago.
And when we talk about that SAMR model from a tech integration point, like that's that modification level. All of a sudden your practice starts to change, and what kids do changes because what the tech allows you to do. So it's like that textbook story of how you go through those stages to adoption.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let me ask you this, Mitch.
Oh, yeah.
New teacher comes to school, or somebody who's never used Blackboard, and they hear like you need to use Blackboard. That's where we're going, right? So what are you saying to them at this point? Because it's a mountain of work, a lot of learning, right? There's all these things in front of them. They're freaking out a little bit. So what do you say to them at that moment?
Number one, you are completely justified in being scared. Like it makes sense. Like you're being asked to do something new that you've probably never done before, so it makes sense that you're scared. Obviously from the district viewpoint, we are creating the core shells so that you at least have some kind of framework there for you. And then particularly at South, I guess I can't speak for other schools, but at South we have a pretty fantastic Vanguard team that there's so many people in the building that would be 100% willing to help with any hiccups that you have along the road. So I would say that's probably the big thing. Try, you can't be blamed for trying. I've failed 100 times trying to do things with tech. You have like a whole lesson planned around tech, and then you realize that you forgot to like open up one link or something like that. So it happens, then you learn, and then the next time it doesn't happen. So.
No, that's great. Thank you. So I would kind of come into a close. We're at that 35-minute mark-ish. Just curious, Mitch, before I open up to questions, is there anything else you want to make sure everybody on the call or here's the recording hears, or any last things you want to share?
Oh, man. Said a lot already. Just try. When it comes to technology, don't feel like, I guess I oftentimes feel like what I'm doing is really small, and then it's nothing compared to what it could be. But then I like reflect on it and realize this has changed the way that kids learned drastically from this year compared to last year, just small changes. So even if it just seems like it's something small, just try it, see how it goes. And if you like it, awesome, then you can keep using it. If not, you tried and you know you don't like it. So I guess that's the main thing.
When you took us into your course, you apologized right away and said it's nothing amazing. And yet I think anybody who saw it went, oh, wow, that's pretty amazing. So yeah, little things that all add up to this greater, bigger piece. So you are to be commended. It's amazing work that you do, and it's great work for kids. So thanks for doing that for them. I'm just going to open up. Is there anybody on the call who'd like to ask Mitch any questions or any last things?
I have a question really quick. This is Carrie. Thanks for sharing that, Mitch.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
I have a question about the adaptive release. I've only used adaptive release with like tests and quizzes. Can you go back to where you were saying you used it for a blog post or a discussion board? How do you get it to release? Just when they post, or do you have to okay it, or?
Yeah, so I just did a discussion board one for the very first time I set it up. I think, so this is the discussion board right here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when you set up that discussion board, you have to, where is it? I actually can't remember
things too, but
yeah. I can't remember. It might be. You have to have it available in the grade center, and then what I did. Okay, so I'll go into my adaptive release that was based off of the discussion board. So you're familiar with this screen if you've done adaptive release, right?
it always takes me a few minutes to get my bearings.
Yeah. So to get it to go off a discussion board, the discussion board has to be available in the grade center. And then from there, instead of doing like a test or a quiz, you can then choose that they have an entry. So the user has at least one attempt in the discussion board, and then it'll open up. Or you can set it that they have to have a certain score, but if that's the case, you would have to go in and then give them a grade before the adaptive release will open up.
So you can set it just as long as one attempt means that they have one post in there.
Yep. So as long as they have one post in the discussion board, then it'll open up the next stuff for them.
That's great. Thank you so much.
And Carrie, it doesn't necessarily speak to the quality of that post, right? So a kid could go in and just type a button. You can't fix that, but it's at least saying you got this far. What did you do with that now? That's a different conversation.
Yep. Especially with the self-paced learning, it's hard for me to keep track of all of the things that every single kid is doing. So
Yep.
yeah, as long as they have it done. Yeah, I can't remember for sure. Oh, go ahead.
Mitch, can you just speak to that? Because there is a lot. I mean, that's one of the dangers of this, right? Is that you have so many different assessments and things like that going on. So our initial thought as a teacher is like, I have to read everything. I have to do everything. I have to go through everything. How are you handling that now?
I trust with the assessments, I trust that the feedback that I have automatically sent is good feedback and that kids understand it. If I see a pattern where kids are doing poorly on multiple of the assessments in a row, then I check in with them and just see what I can help them with. Do I read everything? No. I don't do a ton of discussion board things, but if I were to, I would imagine that I would probably just make sure that I'm checking in on each student at least once every few times, but not every single time. So yeah, I guess that's probably.
No, I think it's just helpful to know that like it's not a mandatory thing you do. Set it up right the first time, get good feedback. I
would never leave this chair if I checked every single thing that one of my kids is doing. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
It's just about trying to get the highest leverage things, I think.
Other questions for Mitch? Okay. I'm going to take that as a no. If you do have anything that you'd like to share with Mitch, I'm sure he'd be welcome to any feedback. Reach out to him via email or whatever it may be. Let us know as the ITC team. Mitch, awesome share today. Thank you for doing this for kids, but thanks for sharing this with your colleagues as well. Really remarkable work.
Yeah, not a problem. And shout out to all of the people in the district tech team and everyone at South that has helped me as well through all of this, because I wouldn't be able to do it without your guys' encouragement too.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks. You have a wonderful rest of your day. And thanks everybody for joining us on the OneCon call today. All right. Thank you.